Hello and welcome to this preview video of uh, the third significant battle, or at least a chunk, the prelude and the beginning of the third significant battle within the poem Beowulf. And I'm referring to this chunk of the poem as the passing of time, the waking of a dragon. And it's a again, you're probably sick of me saying this. There's lots of sort of quirky, surprising details here that one would be tempted to skim over, and as you are used to hearing me say, never skim, particularly when you're in the hands of a difficult, complicated, great book. So if we are annotating along the way, go to line 2220. It's the beginning of the reading on page 95 of the Headley translation. And the focus of the poem is not on Beowulf's middle age. That's an unwritten text. We don't know what Beowulf, did he have a midlife crisis and get, the Anglo-Saxon version of a sports car or the Swedish version of a sports car? Did he do his hair differently? Did he fight more? We don't know. All we know, we get little tidbit flashbacks. And we know right around line 2226, says the rings roll down to Beowulf. Beowulf is related to King Hygelac, like not in his immediate family. I think they're, cousins or nephews or something. The rings roll down to Beowulf, which is a euphemistic way of saying everybody else in line to be the king before Beowulf was killed. He caught the kingdom he'd rejected. He held it tight for 50 winters. Okay, 50 years just went by right now. We are going to get little nuggets along the way of what happened, but very little. So again, my first-time readers can look at this as a contemporary text and ask, it seems like an oddly balanced text where you have so much focus in one area, you kind of randomly skip ahead in other places. But Beowulf at age 45, 55, 65, not the focus. We're getting to the sort of heart and soul of the man in his most interesting moments. So if you go on the very bottom of page 95, it says, there's some great poetry. Across the star-studded sky in deepest dark one night, a dragon ranged unchecked. And we learn that a thief steals a gems-glistering goblet. It's a few lines down from the top of page 96. The thief stumbled through a split in the stone and retrieved the gem-glistering goblet. And there's a weird little nugget. Go to that next stanza, line 2221. Read this a lot. I've never paid super close attention to this until recently. The instigator, the thief, hadn't intended to ignite Armageddon. It wasn't the thief's intention to wake a dragon. He merely slunk into a cave and found a crypt. This slave, so the thief is a slave, seeking safety from a miserly master. Okay, so we know from the very early lines of the poem that a good king, a good leader, dispenses his wealth to those who are loyal to him, therefore creating bonds of loyalty that keep his people safe. Dragons are miserly, and the worst kings and queens are miserly. And here we have another miser, and the miser here, who we never meet, ends up indirectly leading to the waking of the dragon. I just find that really, really, really interesting. The dragon's hoard is immense, but just one little cup is taken here. Now, we're nearing the end of the epic. You are over 2,000 lines in. You know how strangely this poem moves, and you know to a degree what the value system of the poem is, what the poem believes is important. A cup is stolen, a dragon wakes up. Based on what you know, what do you think is going to happen next? Okay, maybe it's self-evident Beowulf fights the dragon. Fine. How does the dragon behave? How is the dragon similar and different to Grendel and Grendel's mother? How does Beowulf prepare for this battle similarly and differently to the battles he's had before? How is elderly Beowulf similar and different to young hero Beowulf? So these are just some things to consider. And you hear me say this over and over. When you're reading difficult books, sometimes it's good to stop and ask, what do I think is going to happen next? Not to see whether you're right, but just to concretize what you feel the book is doing, what you feel the pattern of the book is up to. And whether you're right or wrong, you've at least plugged into what you think the pattern is. And I think that's important. So there's some moments that are easy to get lost in, and I want to help clarify them for you. On page 97, second stanza, line 2247, the story stops and we get a flashback. And this segment, and you can write this in the margins on page 97, the lay of the last survivor. Lay is an antiquated word for song. So you could say song of the last survivor. Last survivor of what? Well, the poet of Beowulf thinks it's important that we know where the dragon's hoard comes from. The dragon did not go to Kohl's or to a jewelry store and buy a hoard on sale. Okay? He didn't go to Hoards R Us to buy this. So where did it come from? Well, we get a lot of attention paid to this person, the last survivor. Evidently, there was a race of people, a group of people, I should say, and there's one left after battle. And he has all the wealth of his entire people. And he hid it in a cave. And his song starts in this paragraph on page 97. And he says, "Hold these, Mother Earth. Men have lost their grip. We mine this metal from you." And he continues. And there's this line, if you go to the very top of page 98, line 2260. "Metal shells rest here without their warriors. Now there are no heroes, no soothing music, no harp, no hawk soaring through hall, no swift horses trampling green grass." In this just really punch in the face line of poetry. We existed, now we're extinct. A really dark fatalism here. Also, the lines that precede it, we see in The Two Towers, and we also see in The Wanderer, the Anglo-Saxon poem, The Wanderer. It's a version of what's called the ubi sunt motif, the where are they motif, when you have a person who's alone, sort of questioning the meaning of life, realizing that he's alone. Where is the golden, where is the harp, where is the song, where is the rider, where is the... So Tolkien does this, other poems do this, and here there's no harp, no hawk, no horses. And then, starting, and this is important, 2269, the middle of page 98, I just have in my margins Enter the Dragon, which is also a Bruce Lee movie. The dragon sees some gold from high in the sky and was hungry for hoards. And then for 300 years, the dragon just kind of sits with the hoard. So that's how the hoard got there, and that's how the dragon became the protectress of the hoard. So do you need that backstory? No, but it makes the general story of the dragon much richer to give it this interesting history. Now, 2278, the dragon wakes up. And again, I tell my students jokingly, some people argue that there's nothing practical one can learn in a literature class, and here we go. Don't wake a sleeping dragon, I think should be in your notes. Should be in your notes somewhere. One of the details that stands out in Headley's translation, and I need to do more research on this, there's not a lot of agreement on the gender of the dragon. I think it's an it and a he. She makes it a she. And if you go to line 2298, it says, "She imagined a wild battle, flexed rapturously, and then undulated into her lair to hunt again for the missing cup." A question to have might be, by making the dragon female, how does that affect the poem? And it seems to, in an interesting way, connect the dragon to a tapestry of other powerful females in the poem. And I would just pay really close attention on page 100, and I just wrote "dragon attacks" in the margins here. She just eviscerates Geatland. And it reminds me of some of the scenes of Smaug in The Hobbit, particularly in the movies, which were pretty overdone. Um, and just a little nugget here: there's only a couple of dragons in this era of literature. There's a Norse dragon that's pretty famous, and then this one. According to scholars, this is the first fire-breathing dragon in Western literature. So next time you watch The Hobbit or read The Hobbit or watch Shrek or whatever, be aware of that. It starts here. And then if you go to lines 23, 24, Beowulf clearly, as the old king, is aware of the destruction this dragon is putting on his people and has to respond. And I would just encourage you to read page 101, 102, and actually there's several pages where 50 years is summarized. And there's a flashback, and I would just write in the margins of these pages, flashback. And we get a couple of interesting details I'll highlight, but there's a lot I won't highlight. If you go to page 102, we get, Hygelac, his king, when he's a young guy, helping Hrothgar, his king Hygelac. We have to sort of get how he dies, right? He's a king. So 2 lines from the top of 102, line 2356. Hygelac, Geat king, closest comrade, perished in Friesland. His skin became sheath for a sword, his skull a cup overflowing with blood. And I don't know what to do with this detail. What do you think? Beowulf saved himself only by swimming, fleeing the massacre by sea, bearing back as he swam 30 suits of armor torn from corpses he'd created. The Hetware, his enemies, had no joy of him. So I don't know what to make of the fact that he swims away. He does kill a lot of people in the battle, but I just find that a curious detail. He eventually becomes king, and in a somewhat sad way, because lots of other young people had to die first. And on page 103, because he's reluctant to become ruler, in line 2390, it says that was a good king. So we get that right away about Beowulf. But all these pages, it is easy to get lost in these pages particularly. I'm on 104, 105, 106 now. We're still in the flashback. And then, Beowulf's in the present day speaks. He falls to his knees on the bottom of page 104, speaks on page 105 in a flashback. He says in line 24-28, I lived whole lives in my youth, endless combat, great wars. I remember every moment. He goes on about how King Hygelac sort of adopted him. But again, we go back in time. This poem behaves as if any vital present moment is an echo of several moments from the distant past. And it's almost as if the distinction between past, present, and future to this world, to this audience, isn't as clean and discrete and distinct as it is to us. They would see me sitting in my loft right now in the present, but they would see a couch my father would sit on over here, and then they would connect my father's memory to the couch, and they'd see a bookcase I built in 7th grade shop over here. And I remember Mr. Farrell, my teacher, and an Anglo-Saxon audience would connect present day me sitting here to objects and other stories as if all of those are sort of one organic thing, not, discrete past, present, future. And I just find that sort of an interesting imaginative space to live in. And it's more enjoyable if you don't try to make sense of it too much. Make it sort of like how we look at things now. The flashbacks continue on 106 and all the way to 107, and Beowulf sort of, boasts about how he fought for his people. And we're back to the present day in his final boast here. I don't know about you, my son was obsessed with The Office for a while, so whether I like it or not, I'm aware of all these memes and famous lines from The Office. But if you go to page 108, Beowulf says his last boast. Something else you're going to notice: um, Anglo-Saxon audiences in any of the poetry, not just Beowulf, they don't read the poems to find out what happens. They don't read the poems to feel suspense. This is more like when your grandparents tell you a story you've heard every Thanksgiving since you were born, but you're just sitting in a comfortable room listening to your grandparents tell a familiar story. It's in what you can learn from re-listening rather than learning the ending. You already know the ending. 2510, Beowulf blasted his last boast. I laid my life down on the daily when I was your age. He's talking to his guys. Now, gray guardian though I am, I'll show you how it's done. I'll kill this creature if it's the last thing I do. And then the more specific version of his boast continues, the bottom of 108, line 2518. I'd go in without weapons, as I always have, if this weren't a dragon. I'd do it like a man, kill it barehanded, like I killed Grendel so long ago. But mortal skin cannot contend with the flame-spitting fiend, and so I go in sword-armed. So the battle, the boast, is rooted in going in, admitting who his adversary is, and arming himself accordingly. But there's a lot of ink spilled about whether or not Beowulf should have fought this battle, whether or not his responsibility and behavior as a king were different than when he was a warrior. There's lots to discuss, and there's lots I didn't cover. So as I always say, pay really close attention to things you notice. Now, I just want to take a 20,000 foot view. These pages, the things I've discussed here, move very strangely. And it begins with 50 years passing in 10 lines. And then we get in the present, a slave steals a dragon's cup and the dragon wakes up. And then we get a flashback to how the hoard got there and how the dragon got to the hoard. Then we get the dragon waking, moving. Pay attention to how the dragon physically moves and torches Geatland. And then we get more flashbacks with the last 50 years summarized in greater detail and some of the difficult times Beowulf's people have had. And then Beowulf's final boast. And as I always ask you, what stands out to you? I've pointed out things that stand out to me, but that's on a comprehensive list of everything worth talking about. So think about what stands out to you listening and reading and paying close attention to these scenes. I hope this preview video helps you, and good luck with your reading.